Hi, I'm Greg Levine, and this is the party line for September 23rd, 2011. And first, I want to get to something I didn't have time to get to in the post, or space to get to in the post, and that is that the Japanese government has accelerated its timeline for when it thinks it can achieve cold shutdown at the damaged Fukushima Daiichi reactors. Cold shutdown, by their definition, is to get the temperature inside the containment vessels below 100 degrees Celsius, below boiling. And they originally thought they'd have this done by the end of January. They now say they're going to have this done by the end of the year, achieve this temperature by the end of the year, and they're going to declare them that a cold shutdown. And I just want to ask a question, really. I'm throwing it out there, which is that how are we defining cold shutdown? How are we defining core temperature when the core might not even be in the reactor containment vessels anymore? In fact, I think that maybe they think that they're cooling faster than they are because the heat generating component, what used to be fuel rods and is now molten corium, has, by several accounts, at least in some of the reactors, burrowed through the bottom of the containment vessel and is now heading into the ground, heading lower, apparently by, meters a year, heading lower. If that element is less in the reactor containment vessel or isn't in the reactor containment vessel anymore, then I'm guessing, yeah, it'll probably be much easier to get the temperature in that core down faster. So what do you think? I'm just wondering. It's going to take a little more research, but this is the first thing that occurred to me when I read that they were suddenly feeling more optimistic. Now, to the point in the post, which is that I want to thank a reader who pointed out that my shorthand last week was too short, that I threw in Australia in a list of nuclear power generating countries, and that's not correct. Australia gets not a single kilowatt from nuclear power. Its electric is nuclear free. However, Australia, as again was pointed out by this commenter, Australia is a large uranium mining country. About 23% of the world's reserves are believed to be under Australia. And it's an interesting thing, to me, right away, to think, here's a country with this supposed, vast resource that the rest of the world, or large parts of the industrialized world, think of as some sort of energy mana. Here they are sitting on top of it, and they've never chosen to use it as a as an electrical power generating source. And the question is why? And I think the most obvious answer would actually be because they have a system that allows an electorate that does not believe in nuclear power to reject it. And in other words, they don't have nuclear power because the people don't want it. And the difference being, in Australia, they have a system where what the people want, at least in this case, has been expressed at the polls and has an influence on the governments. The previous Howard government, the Liberal National Party coalition, proposed developing nuclear power generating capacity back in 2006, and in 2007 he lost his election and Labour came back into power. Now, I'm not saying that was the only issue in the campaign. It was an issue. It wasn't the only issue. But the fact is that it had an influence, and it had the ability to have an influence because in Australia they have preferential voting, or what we call instant runoff, or IRV. And because they have a lower house that runs on the Westminster plan, which is a parliamentary system, they do have a Senate and a House like the U.S. government, but the lower house works more like a parliament. And in that system, these kind of issues can come to the fore because parties that have specific interests can use them as platforms and gain a foothold in a preferential voting system that requires other parties, the more major parties, to actually pay more than lip service, to pay attention to these issues in order to get a second or third preferential vote. I hope that makes some sense to somebody out there. Also really important in the Australian system is that the states have a lot of power. It's pretty much explicit, as best I understand it, in the Australian Constitution, that the federal government can't necessarily make a law that imposes certain will on the state parliaments, if it explicitly is something else in the state. In other words, what I'm trying to say in this specific example is if an individual Australian state says no to nuclear power, no to nuclear energy, or no to, say, new uranium mines even, the federal Australian government cannot pass law that says, tough luck, buddy, we're coming in. It's a big contrast with the United States, where the federal government retains the right to regulate what they call interstate commerce. The Interstate Commerce Clause, 200 years old already. How do you like that? Happy birthday, Interstate Commerce Clause. It's like 208 years old, right? Very different, but very important, because it shows you how a different government would react thanks to a different political system, given the same externalities and new realities in a post-Fukushima world. Not unlike, say, in Germany, where we saw within, like, what was it, a month or two of June, so like 3 months of the Fukushima disaster, you saw the Merkel government making a very concerted point of turning away from nuclear power, saying that they were going to phase out their nuclear power generating capacity and tilt towards renewables and efficiency. The reason they did this, besides perhaps it was a really good idea, by most analysts' account, is because Merkel's government will need a new coalition partner after the next election. The right-wing FDP just got hammered in a local election, is expecting to get hammered in national elections, and the next obvious coalition partner would be the Greens. And you got to sweeten the pot for the Greens, and nothing is sweeter and more readily accessible to the Merkel government than the elimination of nuclear power, which is really the angle there. Again, another party had influence over the ruling party because of the structure of the government. And this has direct market implications, because this week Siemens, one of the giants of German industry, the producer of every nuclear power facility, the manufacturer of every nuclear power facility in Germany, has announced that it's getting out of the nuclear business. And it's getting out of the nuclear business because the German government has decided it's getting out of the nuclear business. So without this automatic customer, and without the guarantees and the subsidies that would come with being the automatic customer, Siemens sees no profitability, even to the point where they're going to get out of partnerships with Russian power companies to build nuclear facilities over there. They would actually rather seize this moment where they see the government is now going to possibly be subsidizing and guaranteeing renewables, and get into that business to, shall we say, win the future, which is decidedly what is not happening in the United States, where we are actually about to witness relicensing on old, past their expectancy plants, like in Seabrook and possibly Pilgrim in Massachusetts, where we are now looking at mergers in the energy sector, where Exelon is essentially buying Constellation Energy Group, calling it a merger, it's really a buyout. Exelon, the nation's largest nuclear power generator, will take over Constellation, and in order to avoid basic regulatory requirements, they'll divest of most of Constellation's non-nuclear holdings, so they'll just become a giant nuclear powerhouse. Exelon, already intensely connected to the U.S. government, large campaign contributor to Barack Obama. Rahm Emanuel, of course, brokered the deal that formed Exelon. Axelrod used to work for Exelon. So the octopus is getting bigger, its tentacles are getting deeper. Full speed ahead in the United States, it seems, for nuclear power, ignoring any of the realities that have popped up since the March earthquakes in Japan. Systemic problem, one might say. I might say that. And that's the party line. See you next week.